Hello everyone, this is going to be a review of the 4Ps. This is all going to be information that you should have learned in principles. So we'll go ahead and get started. Alright, so this model is something that comes out of a principles marketing textbook. So the 4Ps are product, price, place, and promotion. And they are the interior of the components of strategic marketing model. So these are things that the marketer controls, and then outside are the environmental forces, and then in the very center is the customer. So we're going to focus in on the 4 P's in the middle. So first, we'll talk about product. A product is anything of value to a consumer that can be offered through a voluntary marketing exchange. So this includes tangible goods, services, ideas. It can also include places, people, organizations, communities, and so on. But generally, when we think of products, we're going to think of tangible goods, and that's usually how marketing textbooks will talk about it. And then they will also include a chapter on services. When we think about a product, it can be split into a couple different components. We have the actual product, which includes the brand name, the level of quality, packaging, and then the features and design of the product. And then we have associated services that firms will include to set themselves apart from their competitors. So things like financing, warranty, product support. This is also known as an augmented product. And in the center of this model, we have core customer value. This is the need that the consumer is trying to fulfill. So if you think back, trying to meet with the product. We have 4 different types of products: convenience, shopping, specialty, and unsought. A convenience product is going to be something that is relatively inexpensive, frequently purchased, and something that doesn't require a whole lot of effort. A shopping product is going to be something that buyers are willing to expend a little bit more effort in planning and making their purchases. Specialty items are items with unique characteristics that buyers are willing to expend considerable effort to obtain because they have strong preferences. So the difference between shopping and specialty is shopping, consumers don't really have a preference set already. Specialty, they do. For unsought products, these are products that are purchased to solve a sudden and immediate problem. So this is going to be something that the customer is initially unaware of, then something happens, and they aren't thinking of buying it, but then suddenly they need it. So when we're thinking about strategy, and this is going to be important when you guys are working on your project, when I ask you what kind of promotion you're going to use or where you're going to place your idea, these are things that you're really going to need to think of when you come up with your concept. Is your concept a convenience, shopping, specialty, or unsought product? Okay, so convenience products require no search because you kind of just walk through the aisle and you grab stuff. They're available at many retail outlets. So if you say you're looking for a convenience item like toilet paper, candy bar, milk, so things that you just buy really, really frequently, and you're likely to find them at a Walmart, at a Meijer, at a convenience store, places like that. These are things that have low per unit gross margins. They tend to be very low price items, probably less than about $10. The manufacturers and retailers rely heavily on brand promotion and limited retailer promotion to get people into the stores and buy these products. Packaging is very important because when you're walking through an aisle, you're really relying on, oh yes, that's what I need, grab, go. You're not going to spend a lot of time looking at this package and then looking at this package and comparing the details. You're really just looking for what you want and you're moving on. These types of things are self-service, which means you just help yourself rather than relying on help from a salesperson. Available at a lot of different retailers, like I said, low price points. And if the retailer doesn't have the one that you want, then usually consumers are pretty fine just going with a substitute. So shopping products are things that you buy less often. They're a little bit more expensive. You don't really have a brand loyalty because these are things you don't really buy very often, and maybe you haven't bought at all. They're available at fewer retail outlets than convenience items. There's lower inventory turnover because they are purchased less frequency and they're a little more expensive. Channel members are going to demand higher margins. So if we think about things that this might include, they're going to be things like refrigerators, washers, dryers, bikes, computers maybe, depending on how into computers you are. So these are things that are going to not only be more expensive, but each part of the supply chain is going to require a higher margin on the items than they would on something that's a convenience product. Selling these products relies a little bit more on personal selling because consumers are less familiar with these products and may want help making a decision. And we also see a lot of producer and channel member cooperation. Specialty products require extensive search, tend to have much higher price points. Knows what they're looking for and isn't going to accept anything else. These are going to be available at limited retail outlets, lower inventory turnover, and have high gross margins. So you'll notice that there are some similarities between shopping products and specialty products, and depending on the consumer, so say a laptop for one person might be a shopping product because they don't really care. For someone else, a laptop might be a specialty product because they know exactly what they want and they're going to use it for a very specialized purpose. So you can't necessarily just put products in these different categories because it's going to depend a little bit on the consumer and what their preferences are. Unsought products, there's going to be no search because the need is a little bit of a surprise. Price is not important. So say that you get a flat tire on a weekend in a small town, whatever's open and whatever tire is available is the one you're buying. That happened to me once. The purchase is compelled. You have to do it. So it's important for retailers and manufacturers to build up trust with consumers prior to the need. So when they need something suddenly, they're like, oh yes, I've heard of this brand, let me check there. Oh yes, I've heard of this store, let me check there. And probably they're just going to go and buy at the first place that they find what they need. So having a recognizable brand with superior performance is a really good idea. A little review on product items, lines, and mixes. So a product item is a specific version of a product that can be designated as a distinct offering among an organization's products. If we're talking retail, we're talking about SKUs, so individual line items. Product lines are groups of closely related product items. Mixes are all products that the organization sells. And then the product mix width is the count of the number of product lines, and then the depth is the number of product items within a product line. I'll show you a picture to make it make a little bit more sense. So if we look here at the Campbell's product line and product mix, cream of chicken soup is a product item. And then you'll see all of these other soups there as well. So that category of soups is a product line. And then we have a product line of sauces, frozen entrees, beverages, and biscuits. And then however many we have of those, if we count up the product lines, that's the width of the product mix. So Campbell's, and this is an abbreviated list, has, according to this picture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a width of 5. And then depth is going to differ depending on the product line. So soups has the deepest product line, and beverages is more shallow. It only has 3 items in it, so it's not a very deep product line. And just as an additional example, we have Procter & Gamble has a product line of laundry detergents. Product item would be Ivory Snow 1930 or Zest 1952. So we have the different lines, laundry detergents, toothpaste, bar soaps, so on. The number of lines is the width, and then how many items are in each line is the depth. We also have a number of different branding strategies. So there are national manufacturers brands, and this is going to be things like Kraft or Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Coca-Cola. These are national brands that sell through retailers. And we also have retailer store or private label brands. Those all mean the same things. So these are retailers who have developed and now sell their own brands. We also have, we can categorize by individual versus family branding. And an individual brand is going to have its own brand name under a parent brand name. So the examples that we have here are Kraft. There are lots of things that are Kraft, but Kraft also owns a steak sauce that they call A1, and it has the brand name A1, and you don't really see Kraft on it anywhere. Same thing for private label brands, although it's a little harder to know. So Kroger has their line, but then they also have their deluxe line of ice cream. But if you look very closely, you'll also see that Kroger still puts their Kroger brand on there. So it's a little harder to tell. You can also see co-branding, where two brands come together to create a product, and then they both put their brand name on the product. Here we have the product life cycle. If you've watched my other video, you would have seen this already. So this is a table of what happens in the different stages of the product life cycle. So during the introduction stage, sales are low, but hopefully going up if it's going to be successful. If the product is a flop, it will just fail. Profits are going to be negative or low because of the capital investment. Consumers are going to be innovators at this stage. Competitors are going to be one or few. Then as we enter the growth stage, sales are going to be rising, profits are going to be rising. We're going to start seeing purchases from early adopters in the early majority. And competitors, because it's an attractive market, are going to start entering the market. Once we enter maturity, sales are at their highest. Profits are also at their highest and then start to decline because we get into competitive pricing. There are going to be a lot more competitors and a lot more products entering the market. As we get later in the maturity stage, and consumers are going to be the late majority. In the decline stage, sales are going to be declining, profits are going to be declining. Laggards are only the really ones that are buying for the first time. We might still see some repeat purchases for people whose products wore out. And you're going to have a low number of competitors and a low number of competing products. And companies that stay in this decline phase you will still see some retro products out there that do okay. We can talk a little bit about services. So I'm not sure if any of you are going to propose a service for your project versus a good, or if most of you are going to do services. I do see a lot of that with this project. So services are a bit different than goods. So inseparable means that services are produced and consumed at the same time, simultaneously. Heterogeneity means that services are variable. They have a tendency to be less standardized than goods. They are also more intangible than goods, which means they can't be touched, seen, tasted, heard, or felt in the same way that goods can be sensed. And they are also perishable, which means they cannot be stored, warehoused, or inventoried. And this is a picture here. Pure goods and pure services are actually kind of rare, so we have a bit of a continuum here. So when we think about products, we can kind of think of a lot of them as a combination of goods and services, especially since with augmented products, even a pure good will have some services associated with it. Next, we will talk about price, and we will start with the definitions. So I pulled some definitions from a couple different textbooks. Lamb, Hare, and McDaniel define price as what is given up in exchange to acquire a good or a service. And Graywell and Levy define price as the overall sacrifice a consumer is willing to make to acquire a specific product or service. So note that they don't actually say that it has to be money, which might or might not be important. Price can also play a role in evaluation, and it can can provide a cue, especially for services, when someone isn't really sure how to tell if a service is worth the amount of money it is requesting. So a price can tell you a little bit about how much the service is worth, even though you can't evaluate it ahead of time. And price is the only one of the 4 P's that generates revenue. Here are some different pricing strategies. I'm not going to go over them in this lecture, but it would be a good idea to figure out what pricing strategy is a good one for whatever product or service you're proposing for this project. So I would recommend looking these up to see which one is a good fit. Okay, next we're going to talk about place, which involves location, supply chain, and channels. There are a number of different retail locations that we can talk about. First, we have brick and mortar, which is in-store retailing where you physically go to a store to make purchases. This is still the most common retail location. We also have internet and mobile and social, which is going to involve buying products through social media. We still have catalogs, direct selling, and automated selling, which is vending machines. Now we can talk a little bit about channels. We have direct channels, which is producer directly to consumer. So if we think about this, we can use Nike as an example. This would be if you bought directly from Nike's production facilities and they shipped straight from there to your house. A retailer channel would be when the producer sends it straight to the retailer, who might be Foot Locker, and then you go to Foot Locker or order it online and get it that way. A wholesaler channel is going to be producer to a wholesaler, then to a retailer and consumers. So the wholesaler might be somebody who buys shoes from a lot of different places before then sending it on to the retailers. And then the last piece that we can add is an agent or a broker, and this is going to be similar to how real estate agents work. Agents are a little bit different than all of the other pieces because they never actually take ownership of the product. The other ones do, and there's a markup each time that ownership changes hands. Agents or brokers typically just charge a fee, but they do not take ownership of the product. Channels are important because if we didn't have them, you as a consumer would have to go to all of the different producers to compare and shop around and buy all the different products that you want. Just imagine going grocery shopping if you had to go to each producer to get what you needed to make a meal. Instead, what we have is a centralized location that does all the buying for us, breaks the bulk, puts things into quantities that consumers want to buy, and thus shoulders some of the extra cost of shipping large quantities. So then we can just go to a single retailer and compare across and buy the stuff that we want. Lastly, we have promotion. A lot of times people will, when they think of promotion, they will either think of just advertising or just sales promotions, like deals. But promotion actually includes an entire promotional mix, which is going to include, yes, advertising, public relations, publicity, sales promotion, personal selling, direct marketing, all of these things. So make sure that you keep that into consideration. I'm only going to talk about a couple of these that seem like they might be a little bit relevant to your project. So something that I definitely want to point out to you guys, this is a lesson I try to teach all of my classes. There's no such thing as free advertising because by definition, advertising is paid for by someone. So these are the two definitions that I pull from the textbooks. But the important thing out of this is advertising is a paid form of communication. So remember that. So what people call free advertising is really just publicity or earned media. So some other types of advertising, we've got television and streaming, radio, mobile, outdoor, and online. So when you think of different types of promotion in the form of advertising for your project, think of all of these. Please don't tell me you want to use flyers to promote your business unless it really, really makes sense. So think of these instead. And then thinking about sales promotion, these are some types of sales promotion that you can use. But do look into the other types of promotion if they make any sense for your business, or if you can think of any grassroots marketing that would be a good idea for your business. Anyways, that's it for now. I'll see ya.